Welcome to the newest edition of Nerd Central, depending on if you're watching this between March 2nd and March 16th. This episode is sure to age like a fine cuisine because we have the hottest, the freshest, and the kickiest news. After years of service and acquisitions of several companies and disregarding deals made on good faith regarding Star Wars, Disney CEO Bob Iger is stepping down from his position. He's not getting fired or anything, the dude is just retiring, which I guess is kind of nice. But we're moving on from one old white guy named Bob to another. 6-year-old Bob Chapek is replacing Iger immediately. Chapek has been the chairman for Disney Parks the last 27 years, so we will see what he has to offer. Speaking of Disney, the next era of Star Wars has officially been revealed. Early last week, Disney released a video entitled The High Republic. In the video, they basically talked about how the next round of Star Wars will focus on the High Republic, which is the boring period of peace in the galaxy set 200 years before The Phantom Menace. I certainly hope they actually have a plan this time around, unlike the sequels. Well, we are talking about Star Wars, so I can't think of a better way to kick it over to Kyle with Kyber Fight.
Welcome to episode 3 of Kyber Fight. My name is Kyle. Today, we're going to take a look at one of the most overrated fights in Star Wars history. I'm about to ruffle a few feathers with this one, so let's get started. Let's take a look at Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. This fight takes place on Cloud City in the planet of Bespin. And shortly after Han is frozen in carbonite, Luke shows up to save his friends. Again, this will be a recurring theme in this trilogy, as you will see in the future. The fight happens 3 years after A New Hope, so by this point, Luke has had some more training with the Force, but not nearly enough to best Darth Vader. Luke's combat abilities are laughable. It's reminiscent of Rey from The Force Awakens. Wildly slash at your opponent and hope to either hit something or block an attack. And if you watch closely in the beginning, Vader isn't even trying to kill, maim, or attack Luke. He's just toying with him, kind of like a lion to a gazelle. Here's the thing, this duel is packed with emotion. Not much action, but definitely emotion. This is the first time Luke has engaged in a lightsaber duel, especially with somebody on the caliber as Vader. Episode 6 will have them fight again, but I'll get to that later. We can see Luke is really trying in this fight, while Vader was just playing around, not really trying to strike down his kid. But he could have easily have done it. I'm just assuming we're trying to build suspense at this point. But other than that, there's nothing much about this fight. I get it, it was made in the 80s, but come on, we could build more suspense than that, right, George? Luke does the dumbest thing and uses a railing for support, only to have Vader easily disarm Luke. Not literally, but Luke does a tactical roll down the stairs and re-engages with Vader. And may I add, by at this point, Luke is visibly tired. We just started the fight. Suck it up, you Also, the one thing that was relevant was kicking Vader off of a platform. Basing off the ferocity and the volume of attacks, Vader is getting angry. And you can obviously see this, especially towards the middle, later end of the fight. I mean, I would be too. Some whiny teen is holding out against the biggest, baddest Sith in the entire galaxy. I'd be confused and mad too. Vader finally uses the Force, just straight yeeting objects at this dude's head. We cut to another hallway where we finally get to see Vader use his trademark cleaves. I mean, this dude is straight wailing on Luke. Both combatants completely disregard all lightsaber fighting styles and start just throwing strikes at each other. Somehow Luke actually manages to hit Vader in the shoulder. Vader does the same trick to disarm Luke, except this time he actually lops his hand off. I mean, I swear to God, no main character can make it out of a trilogy without losing a hand. Mary Sue. This fight clocks in at 2 minutes and 46 seconds, give or take a few, considering the first part of this fight was Luke and Vader awkwardly staring at each other with their blades crossed. But nonetheless, it's well paced, and we can definitely tell George Lucas was going for a slower, more methodical style between the two. However, like every other movie, the bad guy has to beat the good guy, mostly because we saw the rebels get completely reamed in the Battle of Hoth. But in the end, I'll give this fight 3 Baby Yodas out of 5. I think it's dumb how this fight is so overhyped, yet it turns out to be one of the lamest fights in the Star Wars universe. From the childish fighting style of Luke to the subpar music, I did not enjoy this duel. I don't understand why people love it so much. If you want a good fight, stick around for the next episode where I'll be going over Anakin versus Obi-Wan from Revenge of the Sith. Until then, this has been Kyle with Kyber Fight. And may the Force be with you, always.
Ooh, ruffled up a few feathers with that one, didn't you, Kyle? We'll take a quick break so that all of you can recover from these hot takes. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Nerd Central, where we believe if rats can cook and train turtles to become ninjas, then maybe, just maybe, they aren't so bad. Just some food for your thoughts. No Time to Die will officially be breaking James Bond records already. Not financially, but it is officially the longest Bond of all time at 2 hours and 47 minutes. This news comes just a couple weeks after Billie Eilish's theme song for the film released worldwide, which is kinda meh, but not the worst. Uh-oh, another long-awaited Disney Plus series has been indefinitely delayed. Yes, all of you will have to wait a while longer for that Lizzie McGuire revival. How long, you ask? Nobody knows. One thing we do know is if anyone can save the current state of horror movies, then the Candyman can. Recently, the trailer for the long-awaited reboot to the horror classic debuted, and it's safe to say that people are hyped. One person in particular who is extremely hyped is our very own Wesley. How about we see what he thinks of the original with Blaxpiration, followed by Kaylin with Marvelous.
What's up, suckers, and welcome to another episode of Blaxpiration. I'm your host, Wesley Ellington, and this is a show where we deep dive into all of your favorite black movies and TV shows. We talk about the cultural impact, and we also talk about the quality of the show or movie. So without further ado, welcome to This week we are going over the 1992 classic horror film of Candyman. Now, this movie's a little bit different because it's not necessarily a black film. Now, it has black people in it, and the main villain is a black man, but it's not particularly made for black people by black people. However, that does not take away from the cultural impact that it did have on the black community. Now, the movie takes place in what was then modern-day Cabrini Green, Chicago, Illinois, my hometown. Now, Cabrini Greens is known as the projects, and for lack of a better term, just think of it as quote-unquote the hood. But first, we're going to talk about the movie itself and how good it was. And honestly, I gotta say, guys, this is one of my favorite films, not just horror films, but one of my favorite films ever. Now, the story of this film is about Helen, a grad student working on her dissertation, and she hears about this urban legend of Candyman. A lot of people have heard about it at this time, and of course, you probably know about it yourself. So she heads to Cabrini Green in order to learn more about the legend of Candyman. And on this journey of education, I guess you can call it, she learns that it's not exactly what she thought. Now, this is probably my favorite part about this film, and the reason why is because it's so different from most slashers. Now, there's this sort of romantic tension between Helen and Candyman, and this is something that we never really see. We're usually seeing the woman just run away from the bad guy, and he's just trying to kill her, he kills all her friends. He does, kill most of her friends, but they do have some sort of romantic chemistry. And another one of my favorite differences from those normal slasher films is exactly how Helen responds to Candyman. Now, when usually you see the main villain or the horror guy pop up or spring up on the main character, she screams. She screams loud, obnoxiously, and she's terrified, and she's running away, and she's squirming and doing a bunch of weird stuff. But in this movie, she's almost entranced by the words of Candyman and his appearance. It's something that we haven't really seen before, and I don't really think seen since. And the way they did it was actually pretty amazing. They put actress Virginia Madsen under hypnosis during those scenes where you kind of see her eyes sort of glaze over and she's entranced by Candyman. It was really amazing that they decided to go there, and kind of creepy. Kind of creepy. But the movie uses classic horror tropes such as jump scares and really atmospheric horror music that you're actually hearing in the background right now to set the tone, and you feel comfortable as a horror fan. But it also challenges so many beliefs that you have. it actually has an interracial couple or a relationship, or it's hinting towards an interracial relationship throughout the entire film, and this is taking place during a pretty tumultuous time in American history. This is 1992. I mean, during the LA riots, this is a pretty rough time, and actually the director, Bernard Rose, met with the NAACP to get their blessing to make this movie. It's pretty wild stuff. And that leads perfectly into the cultural impact of this film. Now, if you look at the film from a blank surface, someone who's never seen this film, they see a black man who's obsessed with a white woman and terrorizes an entire neighborhood of people in efforts to get the white woman. Now, obviously that's not the entire film, and there's a lot of nuances to it, but when you break it down to that, it's very Birth of a Nation like. Characterizing a black man as a terrorizing person who just needs this white woman is almost damaging to what this film is going for. And that's kind of my only flaw with this film. Opposed to terrorizing white people or just racist white people in general, a man who fell in love with a woman and is murdered brutally decides to attack and terrorize a neighborhood full of struggling black people. Now that seems pretty counterintuitive to me, and to a lot of people it also seemed counterintuitive. Now, also another big problem that they ran into was just negative stereotypes that came with black people. Now, obviously, it's filmed in Cabrini Greens, and at this time, it was like a hot spot for gang activity. And in the movie, they use actual gang members. And that's what makes me even more excited for the new sequel coming out. Now, there's two other sequels, but we're not going to talk about those at all, ever. Don't ever bring those up. But the new one coming out, Jordan Peele has his name on it, and he's obviously done movies like Get Out and Us that talk about class and talk about race. So they have another opportunity to really tackle the racial problems that were kind of initiated by this film, and they have the opportunity to solve them. I'll leave you guys with the personal impact of this movie on myself. This is one of the first horror movies that I was ever able to see, and it was really scary for me because I grew up in Chicago and I lived in Chicago as I watched this film, and it's about a guy who terrorizes Chicago. It was really creepy. I still haven't done the whole Candyman in the mirror 5 times. I will never do it, and I suggest that you never do it yourself. Or maybe you should. Anyway, I hope you dug it, and make sure to check us out next time on...
Welcome back to Marvelous. It's Caitlin Byland here to tell you about some of the most recognizable weapons in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I may be a half-toothed Marvel fan, but at least I'm not a DC defending, ravioli-loving, face-plunging little b****. In this episode, it's all about Ant-Man. The suit was created by a young scientist by the name of Hank Pym. During the Cold War, Hank Pym was working in the US Army and was recently recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D. He soon discovered a particle that could shorten the distance between an object's molecules, reducing its size but maintaining its mass. In response, Pym developed a suit that could shrink a person to the size of an ant while maintaining their strength and resilience. For the suit, he also made the EMP communication device, which allowed him to telepathically communicate with ants, controlling their every action. It uses electromagnetic waves to stimulate the olfactory nerve center of insects and mimic their pheromones. In order to control the ants, it requires concentration, mental and emotional commitment, and devotion to be used. Using the suit, Hank Pym went on missions with his wife to stop Soviet forces from destroying the United States. On a mission to disable a missile, Hank lost his wife to the quantum realm, the place where she had shrunk to a subatomic size to get through the titanium shell of the missile. After this loss, Hank stashed away the suit and gave up being Ant-Man. Seeing all of this in the first Ant-Man movie, although Pym no longer used the Ant-Man suit, he decided to set up a way for Scott Lang, a professional when it comes to heist, to break into a vault holding the suit and steal it. Pym wanted to enlist him to aid him in breaking into Cross Technologies to stop Darren Cross from making an army out of his own version of the Ant-Man suit called the Yellow Jacket. With the help of his daughter Hope, Hank and his daughter trained Scott and helped him understand the power and capabilities of the suit. They taught him how to shrink and grow, how to throw size-altering discs, taught him fighting techniques, and how to control different species of ants. Hank Pym added a new function to the Ant-Man suit, making the wearer grow to an extremely large size. Scott Lang used this in Captain America's Civil War when he was fighting against Iron Man's team, helping Captain America and the Winter Soldier escape, and Ant-Man and the Wasp to get their shrunken lab back from the bad guys. Now that we've seen the suit, let's take a look at the Ant-Man helmet. Now, when I'm actually wearing this helmet, do you know what the first thing is that I think of? I think, man, imagine if I jumped into Thanos's, Anyway, getting to the actual helmet, the Ant-Man helmet is made of a thick metal used to protect the skull and the brain of the user. Without this particular helmet, the chemical balance of the brain would be affected when shrinking. This may be a shocker, but this doesn't actually shrink or make you bigger. It's just for show. This helmet also has a built-in installation against water and filters out air, allowing the user to breathe underwater for a certain amount of time. I haven't actually tested it out underwater, but I really don't want to because I'm not interested in dying. The Ant-Man helmet also has a radio-like system to communicate with the operator and with ants, as I said before. The EMP is located where the ears are. I've tried concentrating like super hard to make the ants do stuff for me, but it hasn't worked yet. Overall, I think this helmet does an excellent job of replicating the movie's design. It's of high quality material and has a detailed interior with adjustable straps to fit anyone's head. When it comes to purpose, all it can be used for is to display and show off, but I do think it is such a cool item to have. That concludes this episode of Marvelous. Be sure to tune in to next time for your daily dose of Marvel. And remember, size doesn't matter.
Does anyone have any orange slices?
Such big ideas for such a little ant-sized person. Coming up after the break, the boys at the Best Take are watching a Pixar movie, I think, but they keep pronouncing it wrong. Weird. Stay tuned.
All right, let's calm down. Get ready to talk about Ratatoing. 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 Oh, hello. We are the Best Take, and welcome back to Nerd Central. I am Cody Nance, your host. With me, as always, is my three closest amigos.
Oh, wow.
Kyle Harris, William Linder.
We're not friends.
Yeah, we are. Wesley Ellington.
We are friends.
And I already introduced myself. This week, we have a little movie called Onward coming out from Pixar Studios. So Kyle, what are we watching?
We sat down and watched Ratatouille.
Yeah, we love Ratatouille!
Yeah, that's a fire movie, yeah.
But except for we didn't watch Ratatouille, we watched Ratatoing.
Ratatoing. Please explain to people what Ratatoing is.
Well, I would say that Ratatoing is like a dumpster fire version of Ratatouille.
Yeah.
Clearly made, on the coattails of that film to try and confuse grandmas who bought the wrong DVD for their kids at Christmas. But Cody, you have more background on this film, so why don't you tell us what happened?
I'm excited for
Well,
this.
Ratatouing is like a trend in the industry. It's called shovelware. So it's cheap to make, and then you just put it out there, and it makes at least a little bit of money because it was so cheap to make. The interesting thing about this is, while the animation is complete trash,
terrible,
and can be made, I don't know, on anybody's computer basically, they actually spent some money on these voice actors.
Please, go on, Cody.
So,
who are these voice actors?
There are 3 voice actors that I specifically recognized.
Okay.
Their names are Lisa Ortiz, Mike Pollock, and Dan Green. Lisa Ortiz is the voice of Amy Rose. Mike Pollock.
Who is that?
Amy Rose.
This is some Sonic
Wait,
stuff,
go
I
ahead.
swear. Oh,
Oh,
Mike Pollock
gosh.
is the voice of Dr. Eggman. And Dan Green is the voice of Knuckles.
I like
Is
this
this an
movie
OVS?
less now.
OVA
Cody is
thing?
ruining Ratatouille.
No, not in the OVA. It was the Sonic X era of voice actors. Yeah.
That's even worse.
So Ratatoing is this heist movie where these rats who own a restaurant are trying to steal from the rich rats who are trying to get the Ratatoing restaurant shut down.
Yeah.
The mouse, I believe his name
Rat.
is the rat, is Marcel, right?
Marcel
And-
Toing.
Marcel Toing.
Marcel
His
Toing.
last name is
And he
Toing.
has the best restaurant in Brazil
Say that one more time. Best
For
restaurant
rats.
in Brazil.
for rats, and they
Rats,
travel
yes,
all
yes.
around the world. Not from specific places, just from like great distances. Apparently. They never
That's
really
great distance.
specify.
Yeah. I have no idea what this movie is about. I was able to watch 15 to 20 minutes of it, and I hated every second of it. There was like a 6-minute like gear up scene. And
Yeah.
apparently, Kyle told me that happens like more than once.
They show the
lot.
same footage.
I don't want to see that. They're like warming. I didn't know what was happening because they didn't talk about a heist. They didn't talk about anything. First, I'm doing like a superhero thing or something like that. But
No.
Well,
what?
but every Thursday they go to the human restaurant and they steal food that is then cooked for the rats at Ratatoing, the name of the restaurant in the film. But what I thought was interesting is that lots of rats come to Ratatoing.
Yeah, rodents as well. They said rodents in general, so it could just be more.
Could be squirrels.
Could be squirrels.
Yeah.
Could be
Chipmunks?
Chipmunks, yeah.
Ooh, crossover.
But for the week within the film, all they had to serve their customers was one strawberry. So I hate to
Yeah.
ruin the movie with a plot hole like that, but an
Yeah.
otherwise good movie down the drain.
Well, they're rats. They're rats. So like that one strawberry is a lot bigger to them. Like that's more than one strawberry for a rat. I
don't-
kind of like this movie.
It is cool. I enjoyed it.
For what it is, it's honestly not as bad as I expected it to be going into it. I expected like a complete dumpster fire. Like I expected text to talk, like voices the entire time for some reason. And the fact that there was actual voice acting in it, it kind of bumped it up in my opinion.
Okay.
not.
Hey, no.
Hey,
The dumpster fire is there. It's
Yeah.
just people who you like who happen to be in it, you know?
But
will
I'm
say-
so confused because it's obviously so cheaply made. Why did they pay for those actual voice actors to be in this?
I don't think they paid.
You
I
don't
think
they
this
paid
is
them?
a hostage situation.
Oh, okay.
And like you're three people who you love so dearly are trapped in a basement
dearly.
with duct tape, and they were just like, "All right, you got to voice act for us
Look,
in this film."
I genuinely think the voice acting wasn't that bad.
There are a lot of like weird cuts where they transition to one scene at one point and then they transition to back where they were. And then I guess it's implied they ran through a vent or something
Yeah, it
because
was-
they just end up at the end of this black tunnel without moving.
I genuinely don't know like who in their right mind, you know, in their right mind, like really like cognitive and like moving throughout life as a human being would make this film. And
Isn't
think,
it this thing
like,
called
yeah.
like cognitive dissonance?
The reason that I say it's not as bad as I thought it would be, or that I kind of liked it, is that it never gets boring. Part of that's because it's runtime, but like
45 minutes.
it
Yeah,
is
it's only 45
entertaining.
minutes.
Like it's constantly something to laugh at, and it's constantly surprising you with really weird decisions, like the dude that stares at his finger.
But it's that time of the day. Are we gonna watch this thing? Or are we gonna go out and pay to see Onward? Kyle.
I don't really want people to watch either one,
You don't want
but I guess I'll say Onward, just because I mean, there's no argument the other way. I think.
Will?
Thank you. Yeah, it's just neither, man. It's not special. Both look pretty bad. Both look like just really bad movies. Bad.
Yeah.
Don't see either of them. I'm not choosing anyone. If we're gonna save money.
Is this our
We're not
first
gonna go.
neither?
This is a neither. This is a hard neither.
Okay, but Ratatoing is free on YouTube.
Well, okay, so Ratatouille.
You're not
is, like,
saving
free,
money.
but You should still not see either. Maybe Ratatouille.
I just Ratatouille is very bad, and it would behoove you to never think about that movie ever in your life. So I guess Onward has like Tom Holland trying to find his dad or something, and so hey, it's Pixar too, right? So I'll rent that or something in the next 3 years or so.
Okay. So you're not going to the theater to
Oh
see
no,
Onward.
heavens no! I'm
You're
not
saying
going to the theater.
rent
to see that.
Onward in 3 years or so.
Yeah, rent.
Okay.
Onward.
Okay.
Steal it.
See, this is interesting because both of these films are made just to make money purely. I think that Onward is very transparently a cash grab. As we said earlier, this was just created to trick grandparents whose children wanted Ratatouille. But so both are manipulative. But one has Mike Pollock.
Oh my
so,
gosh. Yeah.
and it's free, and it's
doesn't
45
matter.
minutes,
It's just
and
a
it's
lie.
really funny.
It's really bad.
It's a lie.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's a lie.
A lie.
It's bad, but it's also hilarious. So
No.
because of how hilarious it is,
No.
I'm saying Ratatouing.
It's bad, but it feeds Cody's brain disease.
Whatever that may be.
He's terminally ill.
Yeah.
Dumb disease.
Anyway, we've been the best take. This has been Nerd Central. You can catch us if you don't want to see our faces every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. We're also on Spotify if you want to hunt that down. Nerdmageddon is up next. We will see you guys on the next episode of Ratatoing Nerd Central.
Ratatouing.
Ratatoing.